And I'm sorry, I just got a restart button. So I'm going to restart here. So my apologies for those of you who heard me already. You're going to get to hear me again, and hopefully it'll be better. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the Invesco Insights and Innovation at the Engage Showcase. My name is Alex Gonzalez. I'm Chief Innovation Officer at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. The Invesco Insights and Innovation series features people, stories, and companies that really elevate our innovation economy here in Metro Atlanta. And I do want to thank Invesco for making this series possible, and particularly Marty Flanagan, who is the CEO of Invesco, and also the chair of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and also Engage Ventures. So it's kind of a perfect combination here as we celebrate at the Engage Showcase. We are in the midst of an amazing week here, and actually an amazing couple of months here in Metro Atlanta, as we celebrate Atlanta being a thriving innovation hub. Just yesterday, Techstars started it all out this week with their showcase, actually last night. Later today, ATDC, which is going to celebrate with their showcase their 40th anniversary. And in terms of existence, tomorrow begins Venture Atlanta, which is one of the largest venture capital conferences in the country, and really brings innovators together all across the region. And we conclude this week with Startup Battle on Thursday night, which is as Atlanta as it comes. So make sure you join all those events. But today we get to celebrate something that is so uniquely Atlanta, which is that intersection of corporate innovation and also startup innovation colliding together in a unique way. And there really is no better story than to talk about that than with what Engage Ventures is doing, which is why I'm thrilled to have this Invesco Insights and Innovation dedicated to Engage. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the managing partner of Engage Ventures, Blake Patton, and enjoy your session.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to the Metro Atlanta Chamber and Invesco for your partnership and support. As Alex said, Engage is an innovative, first of its kind, collaborative innovation and corporate venturing platform. We're fortunate to call Atlanta home. The genesis of Engage was born out of the efforts of some of Atlanta's most forward-thinking corporations coming together with Georgia Tech and Tech Square Ventures to connect our leading corporations with the top startups, researchers, and innovators shaping the future of enterprise. And it's working. Over the last 3 years, we've hosted 6 cohorts of companies at events like this. And we've invested in over 40 startups and helped facilitate over 75 contracts between those startups and our corporate partners, along with 5 co-investments between the startups and corporate partners. So, and we're excited to introduce you to some of those today. None of this, of course, would be possible without the amazing support and hard work and engagement of our corporate partners, including AT&T, Chick-fil-A, Cox Enterprises, Delta Airlines, Georgia Pacific, Georgia Power, Georgia Tech, Goldman Sachs, the Home Depot, Intercontinental Exchange, Invesco, Invest Georgia, UPS, and Tech Square Ventures. So thank you to our corporate partners. So now I've got the privilege of leading an Insights on Innovation conversation with 2 leaders from our corporate partners, Marty Flanagan, the CEO of Invesco, and Stephanie Cohen, the Chief Strategy Officer of Goldman Sachs. Both Stephanie and Marty are true champions of inclusive innovation. And Stephanie. So as they join us, I'll give a quick introduction. Stephanie is Goldman Sachs Chief Strategy Officer and a member of the Management Committee. Starting in 2021, shortly, Stephanie will become the co-head of the Consumer and Wealth Management Division. She's also a member of the firm-wide Asset Liability Committee and the Global Inclusion and Diversity Committee, serving as a global executive sponsor of the Women's Network. She also leads launch with Goldman Sachs, which we'll talk about some today. Goldman Sachs' $500 million commitment to invest in companies and investment managers with diverse leadership, as well as Goldman Sachs Accelerate, the firm's in-house innovation engine. Welcome, Stephanie.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And hopefully Marty will be joining us shortly. I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but Marty Flanagan is the president and CEO of Invesco. He's also a member of the board of directors of Invesco and serves as a trustee of the Invesco funds. He's chairman of the Metro Atlanta Chamber and chairman of our Engage board of directors as well. So I'll tell you what, why don't we, Stephanie, maybe you and I will kick off while we wait for
Great.
wait for Marty to join. Let's see. Let me check the chat here. Yeah. Okay. We'll just get started. So Stephanie, why don't we start out talking broadly about innovation strategy at Goldman Sachs? As the chief strategy officer at Goldman Sachs, you've got this really unique lens on innovation, both from the perspective of what's happening in the markets and inside Goldman and Goldman's innovation efforts. What does innovation mean for you and your efforts, and how does it fit into Goldman Sachs' overall strategy?
Perfect question for the audience today, and a pretty complete question. So let's talk about the fact that on purpose at Goldman Sachs, we don't have a chief innovation officer. And the reason why we think about that is because we believe that innovation is everyone's job. It's not just one person's job. It's everyone's job to incorporate that in everything that we do. And when we talk about our strategy, the most important part of our strategy is that clients are at the center of everything that we do. So we look at what the client wants, and then we work backwards from that. And we really strive to be innovative in doing that. And so what does that mean? That means when we're thinking up new products and services, we're trying to be innovative, but it also means when we think about what each of our employees does every day, we want them to be innovative. And one of the interesting things about starting with the client and working backwards is that they don't always tell you what they want. And so I'll give you an example in our own business. So we worked with Apple to create the Apple Card. And no one said that they wanted a credit card that was embedded in their phone, that if they were standing in line at the store and they applied for the credit card while they were in line, they would have it by the time they checked out. No one asked for that, but once they have it, they love it, and it's a delight for them to use. And so as we think about what innovation is, it's about delighting our clients and getting them things that they want and need before they know that they want and need them.
Yeah. Is that Marty? I think I hear him in the background, but we'll, yeah, the idea of starting with the clients, that's super relevant for the startups to hear as well. So you've shared with me that fostering diversity is a core part of your strategy, of your corporate strategy. Maybe tell us a little bit more about Launch with Goldman Sachs and why diversity is an important part of your investment thesis.
I'd love to do that. And actually, we have a lot of stuff we've done in the Atlanta area on this. So I'll explain to you what Launch with GS is, and then we'll get to that. So for us, diversity and inclusion are strategic imperatives. It means it needs to be embedded in our business. We believe that inclusive and diverse teams outperform. That's true in everything that we do at Goldman Sachs, but it's also true as you think about Goldman Sachs as an investor. And so what we realized is that we had a strategic imperative around inclusion and diversity and a belief that those teams outperformed. And then we looked at statistics, and the statistics are almost crazy. So if you look at the venture capital space, 85% of all venture capital dollars goes to all male founded teams, and 99% of venture capital dollars goes to all white teams. And that is not inclusive or diverse. And so what we realized was that we had a situation where we believed that a certain type of team would outperform, so ones that are a mix and diverse, and they were being underinvested in. And we do a lot of investing for a living. You don't find that so often. And so we said, we're going to invest behind that. And so we created Launch with GS, which is our $500 million commitment to investing in diverse founders, diverse managers, and building an ecosystem around it. And we're going to judge ourselves on our returns. First and foremost, it's a for-profit investing initiative, but we're also going to judge ourselves on closing that gap. And that's why we're doing the three things. So we want to invest behind really great companies, and so we'll do that. And we'll do that on our balance sheet. But we also want to make sure that there is money getting into the hands of diverse investment managers. Because if you get money into the hands of diverse investment managers, they tend to then invest in diversity in their own business. So it's a real multiplier. And then we want to build an ecosystem around it because we need to build a pipeline, but we also realize that the network is incredibly important. If you get a warm introduction, you're 13 times more likely to get funding. And so we want to make sure we're inviting as many people as possible into that network. And so we're doing all of that together. Pre-COVID, we were flying all around the world and having events all around the world and all around the US. And now we're doing all that virtually. And just a couple of stories around this. One, we're invested in an amazing company called Leasequery in Atlanta, which is accounting software built by accountants. So we invested in their recent Series A. And then on top of that, we recently created this Black and Latinx entrepreneur cohort. And so what that was, that really gets to the ecosystem piece of what we're trying to do. Because Goldman Sachs is a very large investing business, but we have tended to not invest as early. We tend not to be seed stage investors and really early investors, except in fintech and enterprise software. And we realized that there's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of money needs to go there, but that maybe we weren't the right investor, but what we could do is have a real impact there. So we created this cohort. We actually intended to run it in a basically virtual way. We had no choice once it happened because we launched the application process in the middle of COVID. We ended up with 17 founders, 14 companies, and an amazing group of people and companies for us to work with over an 8-week intensive period. And during that period of time, the people of Goldman Sachs really helped those founders with things like investor introductions, how to make their pitch, introductions to corporates. And so what we did was we offered the best of Goldman Sachs to those companies, the same way we would offer it to a lot of the companies you talked about who are the supporters for Engage. And so we really felt like that was a way for us to create the power of the ecosystem and do this self-fulfilling network when we talk about warm introductions, because now all those companies were getting warm introductions from people inside of Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, so I love that. And I think for entrepreneurs in the Southeast, this has been an undercapitalized region, no matter what entrepreneur. So for sure, our diverse and minority entrepreneurs here have kind of the double whammy. And so we'd love to see this focus. It's also, I think everything you talked about in terms of the connectivity and one of the things I think we've seen that Engage has helped us do is accelerate some of those connections and those networks you're talking about that don't exist. And it's been incredible to have, Goldman Sachs and the other corporations support and helping those our entrepreneurs.
Can I give you a story? Can I give you a story on this? Because I think it's so important. So one of the things that we asked the entrepreneurs when we in this cohort was, it must be really hard to raise capital in the current environment, in this Zoom environment. And one of them said, actually, it's better. And you want to know why they said it was better? They said that the reality is that a significant portion of the capital is coming from California. And so if you come from a place where you don't have a lot of money and you're trying to start a company, every time you want to raise capital, you got to fly basically and go to Sand Hill Road. And that's really expensive. And you just can't afford to do that, the amount of times it takes, because as we all know, in order to raise capital, you get told no, even if you're enormously successful. 99.9% of the time you get told no. And so that's really expensive. And so what they said was that Zoom had become an equalizer. Everyone's box was the same size. Everyone was doing it from the same location. And so while I had assumed that it was harder, because it's hard to give someone money who you've never met, actually they thought that it was a benefit. And so that gets to your point around diverse founders, cities and places like Atlanta, which are really growing now in terms of access to capital and to founders, but still not the same as being in California.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this in some of the Engage cohorts as well. I think the other aspect that Zoom has helped with is when we start with the needs of our corporate partners, and we look outward for what entrepreneurs are working and solving on those problems. Both of us are less dependent on those networks, and it's more of a proactive, and we can use this all this remote meeting to make those connections faster. I agree. Hopefully that continues and accelerates. Let's talk a little bit about, we've already started a little bit, but let's talk about how accessing startups and innovation at the edge of your industry, fintech. You mentioned fintech and enterprise software, how that's part of your strategy and your efforts. So in addition to the investment activity, you know, and I know you're focused on how Goldman works with that fintech ecosystem more broadly. So how do you think about partnering with startups? Goldman think about partnering with startups, you know, today versus a few years ago?
So I'm going to start by saying it's really important to us, and we pride ourselves in recruiting and retaining amazing people. But no matter how many amazing people we have at Goldman Sachs, there are more ideas outside of Goldman Sachs than there are inside of Goldman Sachs. And so I think we had a really long history of building everything ourselves. I mean, we have some funny things around how we created our own word processor. We have our own programming language for a bunch of the systems we created in our trading division. The way that we get our email and our phone happens to be something that we originally coded ourselves. And so we had a habit of saying, you know, we can build everything. And we learned that what we really should do is focus on the things where we have real competitive advantage. And we need to look outside first. And so what we really have is a full, when we think about our strategy, it's what is the strategy? Should we build? Should we buy? Should we partner? Should we invest? And most of those require us to work with people outside of Goldman Sachs. And so I'll just give you one quick example, and it looks like Marty joined us, and so we'll bring him into the conversation. But many people believe that we built our consumer business from scratch totally organically. And the reality is that it was a combination of building, buying, partnering, and investing. We bought the GE deposit platform. We built our lending business. We partnered with Apple on the credit card and bought a small business called Final. And then we bought Clarity Money in order to help us with our Insights business, our personal financial management tool. So even a business where people believe we built it organically and that's how people talk about it, it really was a combination of building, buying, partnering, and investing. And underneath that platform, there are countless big companies, but actually lots of small companies that are providing products to us in order for us to provide products to our customers. And so it is the most important thing that we do.
Awesome. So Marty, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. I'll tell you what,
we're gonna. They're amazing. So.
Yeah. Right after you missed Stephanie talking about how Zoom has made it easier for all of us to connect, but sometimes that's not the case, right? But well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you one big question that's going to roll up kind of what Stephanie and I've been talking about up to now, and maybe tell us a little bit. I know that innovation is a big priority for you. It's a big part of your legacy, of your time at Invesco. You know, maybe tell us a little bit, I guess, number one, about what's the driver of that focus and what that innovation roadmap means and looks like for Invesco. And then number two, how does connecting with startups fit into that?
Happy to do that. You know, fundamental to Invesco is innovation, and I'm sure you had this conversation. Innovation has to have a purpose, and it has to follow a strategy. And I'd say, and Stephanie would know this just from some of their businesses, asset management is going through a dramatic change right now. I've been in the business, 30 plus years. I've never seen such a thing happen. And so really knowing what the client wants, where the client is going, aligning your business that way and put innovation behind it is critical. And everything right now has to be at scale, at pace. And that's whether it be for a client, whether it be for operational efficiency, whatever it might be. It's all being, frankly, empowered right now by the digitalization of, frankly, everything. And we're seeing that through our business. We got on it a number of years ago through really our business in China when, typical Americans, we think we're so advanced. When I was with some colleagues in Beijing at our office, and it was shocking how far advanced the Chinese were with mobile digital technologies and financial services, and it frankly scared us. And it set us down this path of innovation and led us into digital platforms, within our industry. It then started to push innovation throughout the organization, and it comes, sort of, if you want to think, sort of at one level, top down through the strategy, but also the great ideas come each and every day through the organization. And so what's the framework to capture them all? And so those are things that we're focused on. But let me get near and dear to the heart. It then led us into beyond what we do internally, right? It's, partnering with Georgia Tech at Cambridge University. Engage is frankly, I think a success beyond what I imagined at this stage. And what it's doing is bringing, large organizations that are very successful in different industries together to learn from one another, but at the same time benefiting from the startup community, which also drives, sort of the roadmap for investments. And that's been another round of investments, for us and, learnings as an organization. So it all is really quite powerful. And it is the organizations that are missing out on innovation for the purposes of meeting their clients' needs are really disadvantaged. And I'll make one last comment. This was coming before COVID, and post-COVID, the pace of change, I'd say most every industry, but I can speak for ours in particular, it's advanced in 3 to 5 years. And it is putting enormous pressure on those firms less well-resourced or less nimble and trying to advance themselves in the innovation space. So hopefully that caught up a little bit to your conversation, and I apologize. So
no, that couldn't have been better. It's almost like you were listening to Stephanie. The startups take notice, right? I think the fact that both of you started your answer with talking about the client at the center of your strategy and the client as the driver of your innovation strategy is terrific insight for everyone. Marty, we started to touch on this as well, but why don't we talk a little bit more about, we were talking about innovation culture, and Stephanie, we kind of started talking a little bit about our diversity strategy. And Stephanie, you shared a little while ago that fostering diversity is core part of your investment strategy and the corporate strategy, and talked a little bit about launch at Goldman Sachs. Marty, you've been also pretty outspoken about diversity in your industry, like financial services, like the technology community has a ways to go on that. Yeah. How is Invesco driving forward on diversity?
Yeah, look, it starts very fundamentally. It's a business imperative, right? And we've benefited at one level from the natural diversity that we've had because we're a global organization. We were not. There are areas where we were failing, quite a bit. Gender diversity was one, and that's where we started our journey. What really finally changed it was when I said, I own this. This really matters. We have to make a difference. And didn't make it a project in the HR department, but it made it every leader's responsibility to drive diversity for, honestly, the benefit of the business and the right thing. And you don't want to be around a bunch of people that look like you, think like you, same backgrounds. It doesn't advance the organization. It doesn't help at all. And so we've made some really good progress. We have a long way to go. I'm not going to minimize that, but it's a marked change within the organization. The openness of the engagements, how we work together, how do we drive inclusion within the organization, but while also continuing to attract diverse talent.
So why don't we wrap up here? I know I'm short on time. Why don't we wrap up with talking about how M&A fits into your innovation strategies at both organizations. Stephanie, you led the biggest deal that Goldman Sachs has done in the last 20 years, the acquisition of United Capital, and you've announced a deal mid-pandemic and with the acquisition of Folio Financial. How do you think about M&A as it fits into that innovation strategy you talked about earlier?
Yeah, it's exactly the way we talked about innovation, which is that it has to stem from your strategy. Right. By the way, I was an M&A banker. I spent 17, 18 years of my career doing M&A. I like doing M&A. It's fun to do M&A, but the best M&A and the M&A you should do is the stuff that follows from your strategy. So we start with the strategy first, which is where are we trying to go? And then as we talked about, should we build, should we buy, should we partner, should we invest? And often the answer is you're going to do all those things in some sort of package. And I think for us, one of the most important things is for us to be the partner of choice. So we will do our very best to be out in the community and talking to people and building relationships. But ultimately, we want people to believe that if they come to Goldman Sachs, their companies will be more successful than if they went somewhere else or they stayed independent. And so that's our job. And sometimes that means it makes sense for us to acquire the business, but sometimes it means we're going to partner, and sometimes it means that we're going to invest. And that's companies of all shapes and sizes and geographies. So ultimately, it's just one of those tools in the toolkit for our overall strategy.
Yeah, and Marty, you same on your end. You recently made one of Invesco's one of, or if not the largest acquisition in Invesco's history with Oppenheimer funds, and then more recently Red Black, the RIA platform. So how does that fit into your strategy and in terms of strengthening your digital platform and those digital efforts you talked about?
Yeah, look, Stephanie framed it very, very well, and that is the way to think about within M&A. It needs to drive a purpose for your clients, and Oppenheimer brought a set of capabilities that were in high demand for our clients, and they were of scale, and it brought scale in many ways to our organizations, not just scale and capabilities, but also with our distribution partners and also operating scale. The other thing that I talked about was this, these digital platforms, and we just look at the reality is our interactions more and more with our partners are going to be digitally based, and so for the last 5+ years, we've been building out that suite to work directly with our partners, and they're largely white labeled to support them to have a deeper integrated relationship with them. And again, it's very consistent with the conversation that we just had a couple minutes ago, that the greatest impact right now to our business is digitizing the business at all elements, and Red Black represented an extension of that. So again, very similar to the way Stephanie described their thought process.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. I'm getting the text message hooks here. For everyone else, I think this was a brief conversation, but gives you a little bit of insight into just how unbelievably fortunate we are to have Invesco, Goldman Sachs, and all of our other corporate partners as partners, and the types of insights and conversations that not only that we get to have with them, but more amazingly is be the fly on the wall, watching them have these conversations with each other, and how we translate those insights into the activity with our startups, both to help drive innovation for our corporate partners and to help our startups with what they need most: access to customers and markets. So thank you, Marty and Stephanie. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Daley Irvin. Daley's a managing director here at Engage. So he leads our corporate innovation and startup programs, and he can share some more examples of how our startups actually work and connect with our corporate partners to make this innovation happen. Daley, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Blake. Good afternoon, everyone who's just joining us, and thank you again for joining. And